The world was brand new, perfect, beautiful. Everything was in place. But God looked at everything he had made and noticed something was missing. The earth was magnificent. Mountains stood tall and proud. Rivers sparkled as they rushed through green valleys. Flowers covered the ground in every colour imaginable. Trees stretched their branches wide toward the golden sky. Animals roamed freely across the land. Fish filled the sparkling oceans. Birds sang in the warm morning air. Everything was perfect. Everything was beautiful. Everything was exactly as God had planned. But as God looked across this magnificent world he had created, something was missing. The mountains had no one to admire them. The rivers had no one to drink from them. The flowers had no one to stop and smell them. The animals had no one to care for them. The entire earth was full, and yet somehow it felt empty. God had created a world so magnificent, so full of wonder and beauty, and there was nobody to share it with.
And so God made a decision that would change everything forever.
God did not speak Adam into existence like he did with the stars and the oceans and the animals. No, this time God got personal. This time God used his hands. God reached down to the ground. He took the dust of the earth, ordinary, simple, brown dust in his hands, the same dust that covered the ground he had created just days before. And with those hands, the same hands that had hung the stars in the sky and carved the mountains from the earth, God began to form a man. He was not rushed. He was not careless. Every detail was intentional. Every feature was deliberate. He shaped broad shoulders. He formed strong hands with 10 fingers. He fashioned feet and legs. He sculpted a face, a forehead, a nose, 2 closed eyes, lips. He formed ears to hear. He designed a heart to feel. And there on the ground of the garden lay a perfect human form. But it was still, silent, lifeless, just dust, shaped into something extraordinary. And then God did something he had never done with any other creation. He leaned close, and he breathed. The body was formed, perfect in every detail, but it was lifeless. And what God did next in this one single moment is what separates human beings from every other creature ever created. God leaned close to the face of the man he had just formed from dust, and he breathed. Not a mechanical breath, not a scientific process, but a divine, intimate, personal breath straight from God himself, flowing directly into the nostrils of this man made from dust. And something miraculous happened. The chest rose. The heart began to beat. The fingers twitched. And slowly, those eyes that God himself had carefully formed, began to open. For the very first time in all of human history, a man was alive. He took his first breath of warm garden air. He felt the soft ground beneath him. He heard the sound of birds singing above him. He saw the brilliant blue sky stretching endlessly overhead. And sitting up slowly, looking around at the magnificent world that surrounded him, Adam saw it all for the very first time. Imagine that moment. Imagine being the very first human being to open your eyes, the very first person to take a breath, The very first soul to hear the voice of God calling your name. That was Adam, made from dust, but alive with the breath of God. Adam was alive, and as he stood up and looked around at the world for the very first time, what he saw was beyond anything any human being has ever seen before or since. Adam stood up slowly. He looked down at his hands, turning them over, studying each finger with wonder and curiosity. He took a step forward and felt the soft, warm grass beneath his feet. He reached out and touched the rough bark of a tree. He leaned forward and smelled a flower, and a smile crossed his face. He was discovering the world, and everything he touched, everything he saw, everything he heard was brand new, fresh, perfect. He walked through the garden, and the animals came to him without fear. A lion walked beside him calmly. Birds landed on his outstretched arm. A deer nodded against his hand. Every creature recognized him as special, different from themselves. Because Adam was different. He was the only creature on earth made in the image of God. The only creature with the ability to think deeply, to feel emotions, to make choices, to wonder, to worship. And as Adam walked through that paradise, he heard something that stopped him in his tracks. A voice. The most beautiful, warm and powerful voice he had ever heard. The voice of God. And then, for the very first time in human history, God spoke directly to a man. And what he said would set the rules for everything that was about to happen next. God spoke to Adam clearly and directly. He told Adam that this garden, this magnificent paradise called Eden, was his home, his to enjoy, his to explore, his to take care of. God told Adam that every tree in the garden was his to eat from freely. Every fruit, every plant, everything that grew in this paradise was available to him without restriction. Every tree except one. In the middle of the garden stood a very special tree. God called it the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And God told Adam clearly, do not eat from that tree. Do not even touch its fruit, because on the day that you eat from it, everything will change, everything will break, and you will surely die. One garden, countless trees, endless fruit, unlimited freedom. And just one rule. Just one. It seemed simple enough. It seemed easy enough. But that one tree, standing quietly in the middle of the garden, would soon become the center of the greatest decision any human being has ever faced. For now, though, Adam was home, and everything was
God
perfect.
gave Adam an incredible task. A task so big, so detailed, that it would take enormous intelligence and wisdom to complete. And Adam, the very first man, did it perfectly. God brought every creature he had made to Adam. Every animal, every bird, every creature that walked, crawled, flew, or ran across the earth. And Adam named them all. Can you imagine that? Thousands upon thousands of creatures, each one unique, each one different, and Adam looked at each one and gave it a name. He saw a massive grey creature with a long nose and big ears swaying toward him, and he called it an elephant. He saw a tall golden creature with an impossibly long neck reaching up into the treetops, and he called it a giraffe. He saw a striped creature with fierce eyes padding silently across the grass, and he called it a tiger. One by one, animal by animal, bird by bird, creature by creature,
Adam named them all. And here is what is remarkable about this. God did not correct a single name. Whatever Adam called each creature, that became its name, forever. This tells us something extraordinary about Adam. He was not a primitive, simple man. He was highly intelligent, deeply wise, capable of incredible thought and creativity. He was, after all, made in the image of God.
Adam had everything. A perfect home, perfect food, perfect weather, the friendship of God himself. And yet God looked at Adam one day and said something that nobody expected to hear. As Adam named the animals, something became very clear. Every animal had a partner. The lion had a lioness. The dove had another dove. The elephant walked beside another elephant. Every creature, every single
one had someone like itself to walk beside. But Adam was alone. And God, who sees everything and knows everything, looked at Adam and said something extraordinary. He said, "It is not good for man to be alone." Think about those words for a moment. God had looked at everything he created across 6 days and called it good. Good, 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 very good. But now, for the first time, God looked at something and said it was not good. A man, alone, without a companion, without a partner, without someone to share life with. This was not good. And God, in his love and wisdom, already had a plan. A plan so beautiful, so creative, so extraordinary that Adam could never have imagined it in 1,000 years. Something was about to happen in the Garden of Eden that would change Adam's life forever.
God had a solution for Adam's loneliness, but the way God chose to solve it was unlike anything Adam could ever have expected. God was about to perform the very first surgery in human history. God caused a deep sleep to fall over Adam. Not an ordinary sleep, a deep, supernatural, divine sleep, so deep that Adam felt nothing at all. And while Adam slept, God reached down. He opened Adam's side and carefully removed one of his ribs. Then he closed the flesh back up perfectly, leaving no wound, no scar, no pain. And with that one rib taken from the side of the very first man, God began to build. He did not use dust this time. He did not form this creation from the ground. This time, God used something that had already been alive, something that had already felt a heartbeat, something that had already breathed the breath of life. He used a piece of Adam himself. And what God built from that one small rib was a woman. Perfect, beautiful, complete. And when God was finished, he
brought her to Adam. And Adam, who had named thousands of animals without hesitation, looked at this woman standing before him, and for the first time in his life, he was completely speechless. Adam opened his eyes. He looked up, and standing before him, for the very first time in human history, was a woman. And what Adam said in that moment became the very first love poem ever spoken on earth. Adam opened his eyes slowly. He sat up, he looked around, and then he saw her. Standing before him in the golden light of the garden was a woman. Beautiful, graceful, perfect. God had brought her to him. And Adam, who had confidently named every animal on earth, looked at this woman and felt something he had never felt before,
something deeper than anything he had experienced in all his time in the garden. And he spoke. And what came out of his mouth were the very first words ever spoken between a man and a woman, the very first love poem in all of human history. He said, "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh."
Not made from the ground like Adam was, but made from Adam himself, a part of him, his equal, his companion, his partner for life. God had not made Eve from Adam's head so that she would rule over him. He had not made her from his feet so that he would trample on her. He had made her from his side so that she would stand beside him, equal, together, one. And God looked at the two of them standing together in the garden, and he smiled. Adam and Eve were together now, in a perfect paradise, with everything they could ever need or want. Life was absolutely perfect. But somewhere in that garden, hidden and watching and waiting, was a danger they never saw coming. Adam and Eve lived together in the Garden of Eden. They walked together through the most beautiful place on earth. They ate from the magnificent trees. They cared for the animals. They talked with God in the cool of the evening as he walked through the garden with them. Life was perfect.
Life was pure. Life was everything God had intended it to be. They had no worries, no pain, no sickness, no sadness, no fear, no shame. They were exactly as God had made them, free, joyful, innocent, and deeply loved. God had given them everything. He had held back nothing. The entire garden, with all its beauty, all its fruit, all its wonder, was theirs to enjoy freely. Everything, except that one tree. That one tree standing quietly in the middle of the garden. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The one tree God had told Adam never to touch, never to eat from. And for a time, they obeyed.
Of every tree of the garden thou
But not
mayest
far
freely
away,
eat.
watching
But
them
of
from
the
the
tree of
shadows of the
knowledge
garden.
Thou shalt not
Something
eat of it.
dark was planning. Something ancient was scheming. Something that hated everything God had made and everything God loved. And it had its eyes fixed on Eve. What happened next would become the most devastating moment in all of human history. Find out in episode 3
Of Bible Stories Alive, The Serpent's Whisper, the day everything changed. Do not forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video with someone today. God bless you, and we will see you in the next episode. Subscribe to Bible Stories Alive, where the greatest stories ever told come alive for every generation.